Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the pasta developers for August again. This time we're having a look at the naval and helicopter side of things. There are actually some really cool posts for helicopters, so I'm looking forward to see if they get passed in the next updates. Hopefully we can see some cool stuff. Anyway, let's get into it. The first suggestion is the USS Timmerman, the EDD-828 for the Americans. The ship that would become the USS Timmerman was laid down in the 1st of October 1945 by Bath Iron Works Shipyard and was named after Sergeant Grant Timmerman, a U.S. Marine Medal of Honor recipient. However, due to the cessation of hostilities, all work on the ship was ordered suspended by the U.S. Navy on the 7th of January 1946, when she was only 45% complete. The shipyard, however, was ordered not to scrap the incomplete hull, as there may have still been a need or use for the unfinished hull. This ultimately proved true, as the US Navy on the 24th of May 1946 officially ordered the construction to resume, albeit to a modified design as an experimental destroyer. As part of this redesign, the shipyard and its designers were given complete oversight of the project, and the designers were to build this destroyer how they saw fit. But as a caveat, they were also ordered to incorporate as many new ideas as possible. As part of the redesign process, it was decided to use parts that had been intended to be used on two prior experimental destroyers that had never actually been built. These included turbine parts from the USS Percival, as well as other parts intended for the USS Watson. During construction, it was also decided to to change the material of the superstructure of the ship from steel to aluminium, and also redesign the bow for better seakeeping and speed. Further changes were also made to the ship's armament, including the deletion of the remaining torpedo tubes and the addition of further AA guns. Construction of the future USS Timmerman would occur from 1946 to 1951, when the ship was finally launched after the US Navy stepped in and requested Bath Iron Works speed up the work in order to begin testing the ship immediately. The Timmerman would finally be commissioned a year later on the 26th of September 1952. She would spend the next 4 years serving the role of an experimental test destroyer and would even achieve speeds of up to 43 knots on sea trials. Officially, the ship was rated for 41.5 knots. The results of the testing were nothing short of success. The engineering and propulsion systems were viewed favorably to the point that a similar system was used on the Mitchell-class destroyers, and the aluminium superstructure would become a staple for future US Navy warships, despite some concerns that were levied about its survivability. In 1954, however, due to various budget cuts as well as the US Navy's priorities shifting to more modern designs, the Timmerman was redesignated AG-152 to show that the US Navy did not consider it a combat-capable ship. In 1956, the ship was decommissioned and used as a test hulk before being sold for scrap in 1959, thus ending the life of one of the most unique destroyers the US Navy ever operated. We've already talked about this machine previously, but it wasn't officially passed, so I thought it was better to go through it once again. We also have a Japanese machine, the Takao class heavy cruiser, the IJN Takao. This was the lead ship of the 4-strong Takao class of the Imperial Japanese Navy, which were built between the late 1920s and the early 1930s. The class itself was an evolution of the preceding Myoko class heavy cruisers and inherited the same general layout, including the large superstructure, which was made even larger, increased the elevation angles of the main battery, improved protection, and also relocating the torpedoes more amidship, which would in fact be a feature not carried over to future cruiser designs. The class itself was also officially was the last of the treaty heavy cruisers they would build in accordance with the treaty, though as we know this would not be the case, as the Takao class would be followed by the Megami class, and during the Second World War would have followed that with the Ibuki class cruiser. However, the class would never be completed, as only the hull of the Ibuki was launched and then was in the process of being converted into an aircraft carrier, and the other ship, which never received a name, was scrapped in the slipway due to changing priorities. The typical armament of the Takao class consisted of 10 203mm third-year Type No. 2 guns in 5 twin turrets, in the same layout as the Miyoko class, with 3 turrets at the front of the ship and the other 2 at the rear of the ship. The secondary armament consisted of originally 4 120mm 10th-year type guns in 4 separate mounts for defending against aircraft. However, these would be later replaced by 8 127mm Type 89 guns in 4 twin mounts. Likewise, the AA armament originally consisted of 2 40mm guns and 2 7.7 machine guns, but prior to the start of the war in Europe, it was rebuilt, which saw rearmed with 8 25mm guns in 4 twin mounts and 4 13.2mm guns. And during the Second World War, the class would receive even more AA guns over time, and by the end of the war, the Takao had 60 25mm guns, with the 13.2mm machine guns being removed. Like every Japanese cruiser, the ship also had torpedo tubes, with the Takao having originally 8 61cm torpedo tubes in twin mounts. However, during the ship's rebuild before the war, this was increased to 12 61cm torpedo tubes in quad mountings, and as typical, the ship had the capacity for a full reload for the torpedo tubes, as with other Japanese cruisers. And lastly, during the Second World War, the ship would also receive a number of radar sets. The next vehicle is a heavy cruiser, and it is the Algérie. This one is another treaty cruiser, but is seen as a pretty interesting one. During the 1920s, the French Navy was trying to find a way to rearm its fleet, severely lacking after the end of the First World War. Although the Washington Treaty had limited the size of its fleet and the scope of its modernization, the biggest problem was the speed at which rival fleets were developing. Be it the Italian fleet or the German fleet, they both were modernizing at an alarming rate. While the French Navy was building its first heavy cruiser classes, the Regia Marina was creating fast, powerful warships, especially the Zara class, which were much more modern with far better performances compared to the new series of French heavy cruisers, the Suffren class. Thus, starting 1930, France started working on a new project of cruisers, the Project C4. The limitations of the Washington Treaty affected the design of the cruiser, which used several innovations to keep it as light as possible while having a better armor and good floatability. The most obvious change is the flush deck, which reduced the weight and allowed for a good speed despite the added armor. The final project was called PN-141, and construction finally started. The cruiser was baptized Algérie, to celebrate the centenary of the Algerian expedition. Algérie's construction started in 1931. It was launched a year later, and finally, after 2 years of testings, it was commissioned in October of 1934. It sailed in various fleets between 1934 and 1937, and at the time, it operated mostly in the Mediterranean Sea. When the Second World War started, it joined the Force Maritime de Haute Mer, or the High Sea Task Force, and first escorting convoys, it quickly joined the fleet chasing the German commerce raiders, the Deutschland class, until March of 1940. He then escorted the convoy transporting the French gold to Canada to protect it in March of 1940. Back in France in April, the Battle of France was starting, and Italy declared war soon after. On the 14th of June, Algérie was the flagship of Operation Vado, during which it shelled the port of Genoa. The damages were negligible, although one of the Italian PT boats dispatched to attack the French fleet was damaged. Algérie came back to Toulon as the war finally ended. Although the ship patrolled the Mediterranean Sea and had several overhauls during the next 2 years, the lack of oil grounded the ship in Toulon. Unable to get out of the city, it was scuttled along with the rest of the Mediterranean fleet during Operation Anton in 1942, without having ever faced the ships it was built to fight. The vehicle itself had a main belt of 110mm and also bulkheads of 70mm, on the vertical side of things, and then on the horizontal it had 80mm on the upper deck. The armament was 8 203mm guns in 4 dual sets, 12 100s in dual sets, 8 37mm in dual sets, 8 13.2mm Hotchkiss guns, and then also 6 torpedoes as well in triple sets. For the helicopter, we have another Weebcopter, the Kawasaki OH-1 Ninja, the Kisurazu Yuzu. In the 1980s, the JGSDF was starting to look for a new scout or observation helicopter that would replace the aging OH-6Ds. This replacement would be called the OH-X program. Fuji, Mitsubishi, and Kawasaki all submitted their proposals that would fulfill the requirements of the program, and in 1992, Kawasaki's design was selected as the winner of the program, and development commenced in October of that year. In 1996, the OH-1 Ninja made its first public flight propelled by 2 Mitsubishi TS1 M10 motors that were entirely produced in Japan. Japan decided to purchase 250 OH-1s in total, and the JGSDF would begin using them as early as the 2000. The Ninja has heads-up displays, liquid crystal multifunction display panels, armored seats, and cockpit glass that is also armored. The reality that the hydraulic system in the entire helicopter has been double increases survivability even more. A visual camera, thermal sensors, and a laser rangefinder are all part of the sensor turret. The OH-1 is regarded as being incredibly agile because it can execute rolls and loops without the helicopter being overly stressed. There are 4 Type 91 air-to-air missiles on the OH-1. The 4 Type 91s are installed for self-defense, and unfortunately the OH-1's manufacturing was slow, and each unit was extremely expensive at 19 billion yen. These reasons led to the decision to stop production in 2010 and have it supplement the OH-6D rather than supplant it. Due to this, only 38 units were produced in total, of which 37 are still in use with the JGSDF. So you might be asking, why are we looking at a helicopter which only has the ability to fire air-to-air missiles and nothing else? Well, it's because it has a weeb skin on it, and in 2011, to commemorate the 4th Anti-Tank Helicopter Squadron's 19th anniversary, one of the squadron's H-1Ss was given distinctive markings with the original character Kisurazu, which was created by the squadron's personnel. The following year, the illustrator Takashi Fujisawa got on board with the project and created the designs of the Kisurazu Yuzu and the other sisters, because of course they are like that. In 2011, the cost of the markings was 150,000 yen, but in 2012 the price doubled. The money to cover the costs was raised by donations as well as selling more character merch. These sisters gained a lot of popularity in person as well as online. However, higher-ups of the JSDF were not happy with them, and in 2013, the higher-ups stopped the project. I'm not surprised. But anyway, that's the good old, that's the good old information on this thing, and the Yuzu Kisurazu is on, of course, the OH-1. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.